Barry, thanks for the great work you do at the association, and appreciate the chance to be here in what is sort of the annual Grammys of the U.S. energy industry. I think that's coming up on Sunday night. We're here to talk about today. In fact, we've heard a lot from my friends in the gas industry over the last hour or so, the tremendous progress that the industries that are represented in this room have made over the last decade. And natural gas clearly has been a big part of that. Abundant natural gas supplies have helped reduce U.S. emissions from power generation, revitalized U.S. manufacturing, radically shifted the parameters of energy security and to a large degree geopolitics. And renewable energy sources are increasingly becoming more economic, and energy efficiency allows us to milk more and more value out of each molecule or each electron. And this abundance that we are benefiting from today really benefits in part from early stage investments in scientific inquiry and technology development that's focused on a long-term objective, a long-term vision. For example, in the 80s and 90s, George Mitchell, the father of shale gas, combined his vision with work that was supported by the U.S. Department of Energy in programs run by GTI in cooperation with the industry, and produced a dramatic impact. Today, similarly, the role that sensors and big data and supercomputing, the role that they're playing in helping us tremendously ramp up crude oil production and gas production in the Permian, has really put this nation in a position of being able to export crude and disrupt the long-held norms of international trade and related geopolitical power dynamics. So first, GTI. For decades, we've worked very closely with the energy industry, particularly the gas industry, focused on key problems that needed to be solved to help bring value to the end consumers and create opportunities for the industry. Things like increasing the productivity of gas production and reducing its environmental footprint, reducing methane emissions across the value chain, enhancing safety and reliability, and of course, promoting energy efficiency in both industrial applications and in the home. But as technologists, we're also curious at GTI about how the next wave of innovation is going to shape this energy landscape. So over the last few months, our team, led by our Senior Vice President at GTI, Paula Gant, many of you know from her many contributions here in Washington, engaged in a strategic planning exercise where we focused on key trends that are affecting our customers in the markets that they serve and how those pressures are going to change what they need to do over the next decade and beyond. In short, we have a lot of work to do together. That's sort of the punchline here. But I show two graphs here. They might be a little hard to see, but in essence, the story is this. We've made a lot of progress as a nation decarbonizing, gas replacing coal, more solar and wind, greater energy efficiency. But we as a world are nowhere near where we need to be in order to meet the challenges set forth in the Paris COP21 Accords. And I'll point to the chart on the right. It's an axis, the axis on the left is basically per capita consumption of energy in kilowatt hours. On the right, it's CO2 emissions. Where we were in 1990, and the size of the circle is the size of the global economy at that time. You see 1990. Look where we are today in 2018. Bigger economy, more emissions, more energy consumption. Standards of living are rising, that's all a good thing. Well, the IEA has looked at its scenarios of stated policies and current policies. That's the tan and the blue. So if we keep doing what we're doing, or if we start doing what we say we're going to do, we end up in the blue or the tan circles. Where we need to be is in the green circle. So we have to have a 4 times bigger global economy with less CO2 emissions. Meanwhile, people are using more and more energy to fuel their higher standards of living. That's a big challenge. Do I have you depressed enough yet? No. So what we've done at GTI is we've looked at some of the technology pathways to try to develop the tools and give the industry and energy producers potential ways to get there. And building on not just what we're going to do in the next 10 years, which is more like a continuation of what we've done, which is really good stuff, but where do we go from here to get to post-2030 and beyond? And in essence, we're looking at a couple things. One, we have to figure out ways to use and leverage lower carbon gas and liquid fuels. We have to figure out better ways, lower carbon ways, to make the stuff we're going to need. And secondly, we have to do it in a way that doesn't wreck economies. So you need a transition that's still safe, still reliable, still affordable, and with all due haste, but also done in a deliberate way to make sure we're balancing economic and environmental opportunities. So the transition that should be designed should be not only protect the planet from a climate crisis, but also to prevent or to protect local communities from economic crises. So looking at the EIA projections of global energy demand out to 2050, they're shown there. And really, residential and commercial demand domestically is projected to be relatively flat. And the demand for industrial and transportation purposes is expected to continue to rise. In those areas, industrial and transportation have proved stubborn to decarbonize. And importantly, out to 2050, natural gas is still projected to grow the most of all fuels. It's interesting to note, at least interesting to me, I spoke at an MBA class at Lehigh University just a couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned to them that in the year 2000, the combined percentage of fossil fuels in the energy mix was 80%. 80%. So I said, hey, what is it, or what was it in 2018? And I heard 30%, 40%, 60%, 20%. It's 81%. So despite all the progress made with renewables and energy efficiency and the electric transportation and so forth, given the growing global demand and the rush to urbanize and to improve standards of living, we're not even keeping pace, hence the challenge from the previous slide. So the economy-wide actions we need to achieve deep decarbonization will require investments in innovation and breakthroughs in industrial and manufacturing processes, as well as heavy transport. So let's talk about some of these, I guess, deep decarbonization post-2030. First is, I'm going to highlight 2 areas from our research efforts these days. One is methane conversion, natural gas conversion, to lower carbon fuels, making the transportation fuels, the boiler fuels, things that we need to run this world in a lower carbon way. And secondly, renewable gases. So Don Santa, when he was here from INGA, mentioned gas and renewables. I would submit to you also that gas is renewable, or can be renewable. And in the near term, we're looking at a growing role for renewable natural gas. And that's pipeline quality gas that comes from biomass sources. It's landfills, it's dairies. That's in practice today, small scale. In the future, to make an impact, we need larger, more reliable sources. And for example, GTI's UGAS gasification technology efficiently converts wood waste into renewable natural gas through a gasification process. It produces the renewable gas you need and also addresses a growing problem that we're beginning to see in this nation and frankly in other areas, that a growing supply of unusable woody biomass. Think of the California fire situation and the underbrush that needs to be removed and done something productive with. We're also developing novel processes to use methane to make liquid fuels and chemicals, using clean electrons to drive that process, underpinned by unique catalysts and electrically conductive supports. So what does that all mean? One of the key areas of opportunity that we're seeing right now in the world is low-carbon aviation fuels. It's proving to be a nut that's difficult to crack. Can't fly planes with batteries, at least not too far. Not sure you can do it with hydrogen. Yeah, many challenges there. And we have a couple technologies, one called Cool GTL, that actually starts with methane, natural gas, takes more CO2 out of the air, mixing it in with that methane to produce a drop-in aviation fuel that's lower carbon. We're making that in a plant in Chicago as we speak. On a bigger scale, a technology that we developed a few years ago called IH² has been licensed to Shell. And Shell is building a large-scale demonstration plant in Bangalore, India, that's now in the startup phase. So when you hear Shell talk about renewable aviation fuels, they're talking about GTI's IH² process. Speaking of Shell, so Shell came out with a Sky scenario in response to the COP21 Accord, trying to look out in terms of what the fuel mix was going to be there. And you see big roles for gas and other products. But what I wanted to highlight there was their call out to hydrogen. Back to this gentleman's question earlier. And we are bullish at GTI on the role of hydrogen in the future that's produced today through steam methane reforming of natural gas, but in the future can be produced in a variety of very clean ways, including dissociating seawater through electrolysis with excess power that could come from wind, concentrated solar, even nuclear. So we're excited about that as a clean fuel, but also excited about it as a great energy storage medium. So before we get too excited, though, let me just point out, in just studying a little bit before the talk, I looked back into some of the GTI annals, if you will, and I didn't read the whole thing, but I looked at the summary report of a hydrogen symposium that we hosted on hydrogen in 1978. And it was hot then. It was hot under George W. Bush in the early 2000s. It seems to be getting hot now, and I think it's going to hit in 2040. So every 20 years. But I do think it's a real interesting confluence of clean molecules using existing infrastructure, using technologies that exist and aren't fiction. And I think it creates a real opportunity for the industry and for policymakers and populations to take advantage of that. So I think there's a big opportunity in hydrogen. Let's focus on the second area of focus, and that is human progress. And I'll wrap up here in just a couple minutes. As we imagine these low-carbon energy systems serving communities across the country and, frankly, across the world, we have to design them to support rising standards of living, and that's a good thing. But the energy systems have to be reliable, resilient, and affordable. Someone mentioned Africa earlier. Huge population growth, and over the next 20 years, IEA forecasts that 600 million Africans will go from the countryside into the cities. That's twice the rate of urbanization that China did in the last 20 years. It's mind-boggling. So decarbonized energy systems are going to have to enable job creation and economic growth in the communities in which they serve. And the transition of energy also has to embody what we think about when we think of a high standard of living, quality of life, clean water, clean air, clean cooking fuels, reliable access. So what's the role that the energy storage and transport infrastructure that we have today, the existing infrastructure, what role is that going to play in this broad energy transition? And in short, I think it's big. In addition to developing solutions to support the new energy systems, we're asking at GTI how we can leverage existing and proven infrastructure. In this regard, we think there's a tremendous opportunity to leverage the existing natural gas network for enhanced energy storage. Now again, we're talking not the next decade, maybe not the next decade after that, but 2030, 40, 50, and beyond, to get to that deep decarbonization that addresses that one slide I put up on the right there earlier. So battery energy storage will be critical, but it has limitations with respect to interseasonal storage requirements. For example, you can't really produce a bunch of electrons in the summer and then store them until you need them in the winter. That's what the natural gas infrastructure system is for. With over 2 million miles of pipe and then complemented by above and below ground storage operating across the United States, the gas system is inherently a large-scale and pervasive energy storage system that provides tremendous reliability and deliverability that is simply unparalleled on this earth. And it's been proven for many decades. So, how will these assets in the natural gas infrastructure and the way it operates with its efficiency and effectiveness integrate increasingly more amounts of low carbon gases like renewable natural gas, hydrogen-rich methane, green hydrogen, and so forth? To realize this potential, we're going to need a robust transportation system to store and deliver hydrogen where it's needed. And to do this cost effectively, we're going to have to adapt the existing gas infrastructure system. In the near term, there's already potential for hydrogen to be blended at small percentage levels and be injected directly into the pipeline storage and transportation system. Over time, some of these systems might adapt to move pure hydrogen. It's a big task. The hydrogen industry to date can be summarized as this: it's produced by experts and it's consumed by experts. So to bring that to the mass market will create some challenges and opportunities. And investments in R&D at scale are needed to better understand the material limitations and maximum blending amounts that can be safely incorporated into the system. And we do have at GTI research underway in a variety of areas there. And we're also, just a couple of months ago, announced softly a partnership with EPRI on hydrogen, the Electric Power Research Institute. And it's a collaborative development to advance lower carbon technologies, fuels, and processes across the integrated value chain. And when you think about it, it's a natural collaboration. EPRI, with its connection to the large electricity generators and the grid operators, and GTI with its long-standing record of working with pipeline companies and distribution companies and the end-use arenas. So we launched this a few months ago, and the efforts will be focused on developing low-carbon solutions that can be made a reality by 2030 or not much beyond that. Because that's about the time that the easy stages or the easy steps that we can take to decarbonize will already be taken. And we're going to have to do some step changes to make some impact on that deep decarbonization that we all realize will be required. And finally, just sort of in summary, to address the economy-wide challenge of this energy transition, we need an array of solutions rather than just a limited set. Can't pick winners and losers today, but we need to put a lot of tools and options, get them developed, and get them on the table. I suspect we'll need low-carbon fuels and renewable electrons. And we'll need energy efficiency and battery energy storage and efficient electrification, all working in an integrated manner. Innovation will be key to making the transition in a safe, affordable, and reliable way. And given the magnitude of these challenges, cooperation among people in this group, all the different energy sources, will be important and will be critical in advancing the technologies toward the right solutions for the energy consumers, whether those solutions are electrons or whether they're molecules. And at GTI, we're committed to working hard and in partnership with all of you to get to the right solution. So I thank you for your time and be happy to take any of your questions. Thank you.